Chris, you had an incredible talk this morning, and I really highly recommend everyone checking out Chris Heilmann from Mozilla's talk on broken promises of HTML5. I think that graph is great, and those of us who've lived through a few cycles of what ended up being successful technologies can attest to that one. So why, I guess I'll play a little devil's advocate, although obviously I'm a believer and have come from the web side of games and things like that. But from your standpoint, why do you think this is eventually going to be a technology that's adapted widely, although you could argue it's already starting to be adapted widely in the less performance-intensive applications? But why do you see that it's going to get over that hump and back into that stage of nice cruising adoption eventually?
I think the main thing about the web as a platform is that it is already existing. It's already there. We already used it for 10 years now in messed up technology, and we had to bend over backwards to make amends for different browsers and in different environments. And we learned a lot from that. And we learned a lot from escaping into the world of plugins and doing things in a faster way now. And now we're just reconverging those two into one platform. The issue is that these two worlds have not talked to each other very much, and a lot of propaganda against Flash from the HTML5 community and against HTML from the Flash community didn't help us in the past, and is actually moving away from that a bit as well. So we all want to do the same thing. We now have a much better platform in browsers that we had 10 years ago, but that doesn't mean we have to reinvent the wheel and actually start from scratch again. We can still learn the things that we used in plugin environments to just use it now in different technologies, and that's why I'm seeing a lot of tooling going that way, and a lot of JavaScript libraries for gaming, for example, using paradigms of Flash development, not because it's better, but because it's much, much easier for developers who build Flash to build things in them now.
And as far as adoption on the mobile side, I mean, I know that Mozilla's been working on a new initiative with that. When I was looking it up, and I think I'm going to throw this out here because I think it will be an interesting kind of devil's advocate again. I'm excited personally about it. I think that the strategy of going for the mass market could be really, really interesting on Mozilla's part. And of course, when I read the business press on it though, which is probably as accurate as it's ever been, which it means it's highly inaccurate, they say, well, Mozilla might in the end get 1% of the mobile market.
Well, the interesting bit about the Firefox. No, I don't. I technically avoid those things. I especially love technical specialist blogs where every single link just links back to that blog. So I know for a fact that they have a business model of collecting clicks. So they're not experts. I'm sorry. That's it's not far removed from click tracking websites and adult websites if you think about it from the. So let's not go there.
It's true.
It's the yellow press of the internet. It's like the Suns or the
New York Post. 1%. How do you know?
And the good thing about Firefox OS is that it's actually targeted at the 1%, if it's a 1%, that doesn't have any connectivity right now. The trick about Firefox OS is not that we want to kill Android and kill iPhones. What we want to do is bring mobile connectivity, web connectivity to people who can't afford now smartphones at the moment. It's for people that actually should be going on the web.
What's your estimate on how many people that is, by the way?
I have no idea. But that's why we're partnering with people that are in these countries that have feature phones right now and want to upgrade to a smartphone that is web connected with Firefox OS. So the number game playing with that is actually quite an interesting one. I think it's incredibly empowering when you see our UX people are right now out in South America and interview people how they use their phones and how they actually live with their phone and what they would love from a phone. So we're building the system around this research rather than like saying, okay, we build another phone and bring it out on the market where there's nobody else. So it's really it's not a business decision, but it's a Mozilla foundation idea decision. We have a manifesto that tells that the web should be open and available for everybody. And this is what we're doing with this one as well, because we saw a similar situation on the mobile web that we have on the desktop web when we started with Firefox. So it's not fair that you have to have a lot of money or subscribe to one model just to get content on a phone, because it's too useful for that. So with Firefox OS, we want to reach the people that actually don't participate yet in the mobile web, and at the same time opening the mobile web to everybody out there in terms of the APIs that we release that any other platform can use afterwards as well. It's about fighting lockout once again, not about gaining market.
And maybe a better long-term strategy.
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful initiative, and I think it succeeds wildly.
Yeah, I can see it, because the other good thing about it is it's completely open. So even the things that we don't think about, people are doing already. As ButoGecko, the system that is under Firefox OS, is an open source thing on GitHub. People are putting this on Raspberry Pis and television set-top boxes already that we haven't even thought of. So it's a tinkering tool under the hood that people can use, and not a perfect platform that actually just gets sold.
From the standpoint of where you think it will go in the future, I know you mentioned some things like that, but in a nutshell, what do you see the future, if it's bright, being for HTML5, and how are we going to get there? Because obviously we're in the hangover stage a little bit.
Yeah, I think the main target that I'm having at the moment, and a lot of people have as well, is going into tooling. We have to take HTML5 out of the write everything by hand and test everything and try to find the solution for every browser out there, into making it a what you see is what you get kind of approach. There's lots of developers out there that do a 9-to-5 job, that just don't want to tinker, they don't want to learn everything they use, they just want to see it working. And we have to build them, give them tools, and integrate with things like Eclipse, integrate with things like Visual Studio, integrate with tools like Photoshop and Dreamweaver to actually bring these new technologies into these systems, rather than saying use these 12 different random libraries and make it work. That's just not gonna happen. We have to bring, I want to liberate the really bad web apps out there from the dark ages. I mean, an image uploader should not be 12 different form fields and 3 steps to upload. I should be allowed to drag and drop that into the browser and upload it and generate the thumbnails at the same time. And it can be done easily in HTML5, but there's no editor for it. And so I think enterprise level content management systems can very much appreciate what HTML5 has to offer, but nobody talks to them at the moment. So once we get into that market, it gets much more interesting. And hype works in one way to get them excited about it, but then we also have to deliver after that. And if it still means it doesn't work in 20% of the cases, then it's not good enough. So I think the bright future of HTML5 is just to turn, instead of condemning the old web of oh, that's never going to change, we have to drag it on slightly to bring it back, get it better out there. Because in the end, if we don't build systems that make the life easier of people, then we should build systems. It's we shouldn't punish people for using a certain technology. It should be as natural and as easy to do this as they want to. Which is an uphill battle. I mean, I call that the Stockholm syndrome of interfaces. There's lots of people who do a 7-step process every morning, and when you teach them something that would be a 1-step process, they fight that tooth and nail to say I don't want to learn something new, I just want to do the thing I've done the last few years because I already do that automatically, I don't want to learn about it. So that's a good challenge for us to show where more intuitive interfaces, better interfaces get in there. And I think input devices are a very important thing. The touch interface has completely changed the model of how we actually use applications. And that will be more and more. And what saddens me is that a lot of that actually is just limited to location. When Square has press releases saying oh, we made the checkout in every shop better than only in America. That's not every shop. That's actually not possible that way. So
what? You mean they were not the center of the universe?
No, not really. No, I think seeing that what Adobe and other people are releasing, and seeing that most of the engineers that did these kind of things originally came from Romania, there is an incredible market out there. It's just you need to be man enough to hire them from the Silicon Valley rather than dragging them into the Silicon Valley and wondering when they're unhappy here.
So from the standpoint of developers here, if they want to use some of the new tools, I mean, I know that Mozilla has an incubator, which one of my good friends, Diane, is hired. She's here talking at the conference. She's involved with. If people are developing for the Mozilla phone products, can those teams take advantage of Mozilla's?
I'm not sure. I mean, it would be the answer. It would be for her to answer. I mean, Web Forward, the project is actually more about introducing companies that want to do things with the web to VCs and to other people to actually get them on the way. We don't sponsor companies per se. So the benefit of supporting Firefox OS and building things for Firefox OS is that you don't build for Firefox OS. You build an HTML5 application that you can run in any browser, that you can use PhoneGap to run on iOS and run on Android. You don't have to do something extra for Firefox OS. That's what we wanted to make sure from the very beginning. We don't want to build another iOS walled garden. So what you do for Firefox OS runs in every browser and runs on the web as well. So you don't do any extra work. You just have the opportunity to have a new marketplace where you could reach a lot of people, and especially an interesting market that is not available on the other platforms. You don't sell many things in countries that can't afford iPhones through the iPhone market. It's like, funnily enough. So it's no extra effort for you, but it's a good opportunity for you. But that said, of course, there is the documentation that comes with it, there is the platform information that comes with it, so you can learn a lot as a developer building your first HTML5 app with that, rather than just building an app for a closed environment.
And an emulator for it?
There's an emulator, there's a simulator, there's now a plugin for Firefox itself that you can simulate it in the browser and test it out with a bookmarklet. So it's much, much easier than it was in the past. And I think it's just the packaging that you can do with Apache Cordova then for example, to make it work on an iPhone as well. A lot of iPhone apps are actually HTML5 apps. Not many people know that. But when you do it right, you don't have to worry about it.
Apple's all unhappy about that, but yeah.
That's not my problem. It's a very important part of to think that you don't build for, because there is one thing that developers don't have a lack of is problems with like having to support different platforms. So we wanted to make sure that the Firefox OS is a very high-class HTML5 app platform that works with others as well. These apps will work everywhere, but Firefox OS gives you access to hardware through JavaScript that others don't do.
Okay. In closing, is there anything that you would like to say? Because you can say anything about what you think where the future is going to go, or even a controversial opinion is perfectly fine.
No, I don't have any of those. I think what I wanted to tell people is that we are very good in publicly shaming our own platform. We are very good in complaining on Twitter constantly that things are broken and to actually write blog posts about things that have been broken without even testing them. And I think it's a very strange way of selling ourselves. So it's you don't see native developers complaining what is broken in other platforms as openly as we do.
That's fascinating. In fact, it's quite the opposite. They're very careful. In fact, what I'm seeing from native developers is that some of them are kind of afraid in a way, and they're actually the opposite. They will slam other types of development, so that I think it's because they've invested a lot of their time. And it's completely understandable. They've invested a lot of their time in a specific platform, which they hope does well, and become experts in it. And it's not necessarily in their interest that something else does well. And of course, if you're a native developer and you look at HTML5, you're not going to give it a good review. I've never seen one do that. But interestingly enough, a lot of times
we don't need people to actually rant about it because we do it ourselves. So my main trick, and I blogged about this, is just don't post in anger. Think about it before you post, because you might actually insult people without realizing it, and you might actually block your own future about it. So it's the internet is a wonderful thing. That's why I started with it. I was a radio journalist and I didn't want to work in radio anymore, and I started building my first website. And it's as powerful as we make it. It's also as destructive as we make it. So if we want HTML5 to succeed, then we should tell the good stories, the success stories, and not the flashy success stories, but just the ones, look, I did these 3 things and this is how fast it worked. So don't complain in public, complain where it's necessary. So file bugs and complain to browser makers directly on their tracking systems and not somewhere randomly on Twitter.
Right, and then also just to bring it back in full circle about what Chris said about the business news. Right now in the business news, when they interview developers about HTML5, almost unanimously they are interviewing native mobile developers, who would of course be the most hostile to it, because you invest your time in a certain technology, and that's the one that you would like to see become dominant or stay dominant.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you want to have quick headlines that say something, you ask the person who is most opposed to the thing that you want to ask.
Mm-hmm. Not that some of it's not absolutely legitimate, but it is a very select subset. Wonderful. Well, we're so thankful you came from England, and we're so lucky that you came out here to speak.
Not to worry. Thank you very much.